This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by InPen from Companion Medical. Please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise, and to always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. The InPen is America's only FDA-cleared smart insulin pen and app system. InPen works like other pens, it's just a lot smarter. You can use an InPen like any other injector pen. The difference in InPen is that it tracks each dose and delivers your data to a secure app on your smartphone. So finally, there's no complicated math and no logbook to update. In just a moment, InPen user Fiona Wild's going to tell you a little bit about why she loves her InPen, and then we're going to get right to Ask Scott and Jenny. But if you're interested in finding out more, I urge you to go to companionmedical.com or click on the links in your show notes or the ones that are available at juiceboxpodcast.com. Welcome to Ask Scott and Jenny. In today's episode, I, Scott, and Jenny Smith from the Diabetes Pro Tips series and Defining Diabetes, you know Jenny. Jenny works at Integrated Diabetes. She's a CDE, a registered pump trainer, CGM trainer, dietitian. She has type 1. I bet you that Jenny is the kind of person that would never throw a piece of gum in a waste paper basket without wrapping it in a tissue first. Right after InPen user Fiona Wild tells us how her InPen helps her remember her basal insulin, Jenny and I are going to talk about your A1C test. What's better? Is it the clarity report from Dexcom, what that tells you? Is it what they give you in the office? How do you know what to trust and what not to? It's actually a bigger topic than you would think. And then, in the middle of that, Jenny ends up having her own question for me, which I answer.
They also give you your long-acting reminders. I take Lantus, so it'll give me a reminder of like, hey, you need to take your Lantus, and then you can record that in the app as well. So it says, okay, I just gave myself X amount of units of Lantus, like it's all recorded in there. And that's good too, because that kind of goes back to my thing of, oh, oops, yeah, I forgot to, give myself this or give myself that. Because with pens, it is kind of easy to forget, or it's easy to just like give yourself insulin and then walk away from it because you don't have something attached to your body for the constant reminder. I definitely feel a bit more free, which is really nice, but it's easier to skip some things too. And that's where the InPen makes sure that you don't skip steps that, maybe are easy to forget. It helps you plan for the steps that you didn't forget, and then it helps you plan for the future as well.
Okay, now Jenny, this one's interesting because you said you wanted to do a pro tip episode about this, but it's...
or answer the question, maybe, if it's the one I'm thinking of.
Melissa asks, my A1C in the doctor's office is always much lower than my Dexcom GMI. For example, my doctor said my A1C was 5.7, but my GMI for 90 days is 6.4. Which do you think is more accurate? Is that the one you were expecting?
That's the one I was expecting, and it's a very, very common question. In fact, it's a question that I get a lot from people that I work with. Mm-hmm. They're like, I see my CGM is telling me this, and I went in and I got this A1C done, and my A1C is higher, my A1C is lower, right? So essentially, GMI, and do you, Scott, know what GMI stands for?
Sure. It's gross mountain infrastructure. No, I don't know.
So GMI is glucose management indicator.
That makes more sense.
Right? And if you remember within Dexcom, for a while they had A1C, your estimated A1C, right? Well, and then for a while they got rid of any estimate whatsoever. Yeah. That was completely gone from any of your clarity reports. And then they did all of this, hashing and thinking and putting together something new, and they came up with this GMI termed concept, glucose management indicator. And really what it means is Clarity kind of has its own secret sauce sort of algorithm that it takes your glucose within a range, whether it's a 14-day, 30-day, 90-day, and it estimates based on where your glucose trend has been within that defined time period. So one, if you are looking at a time period of 14 days and you're getting your GMI, perhaps you've taken all of the pro tips that we've done and you've put them into work and you're like, I am knocking this out of the ballpark. I've got this beautiful, looking average. It's come down considerably. Your GMI for that 14-day is going to look great. And then you go in, you get this A1C and, A1C is higher. And you're like, well, that doesn't look right. Why is this here? Well, the time frame is different. We have to remember that A1C is averaged over a 90 to 120 day time period, right?
And is that 90 to 120 because some people get it done every 90 or every 120, or is it because it bleeds into that period, right?
It has to do, so 90 to 120 days is A1C, is where A1C comes from, mainly because of the life of the red blood cell. So doing a little biology for you, your red blood cell has hemoglobin attached. And when we look at how much glucose has attached to that hemoglobin part, we read A1C over the time period of life of your average blood cell, your average red blood cell, which is about 90 to 120 days for most people. So we have this long timeline of how much glucose has kind of stuck there, and you can tell an average blood sugar value then based on that. So the problem is that, of course, as we've talked before, A1C isn't the end-all be-all of glucose management, right? It doesn't give the time in range. It doesn't give how much variability you're having to get that average. It's just a one-spot check-in, right? Same thing with this GMI. The GMI is also just an average of where your CGM data trend has been over the course of whatever defined time period you have populated into your clarity report for that evaluation. So if you're looking at 14 days, it might look phenomenal. Or if you've been on vacation for 14 days and you've been eating all of the pizza and margaritas on the beach and whatever and not paying attention, you could have this high looking and your A1C could actually have been much better because your time period before that, you were doing a phenomenal job. Okay. So therein lies some of the difference there. I guess
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. So imagining in your mind this, I think most of us think of it as a 90-day period. We get our A1C checked and 90 days later we do it again. But if I had what you just described, not 90 days ago, but 3 more weeks past that, if those 3 weeks were magical for me, my A1C was 5 in those 3 weeks. And then the next 90 days, it was more like Melissa's describing it. The GMI is telling me the last 90 days was 6.4, but when I got it back, it was 5.7. Is it because some of those first 14 days might still be, do you see what I'm saying? Is the blood test looking back further than my last doctor's appointment? Possibly. It's
actually weighted, I think, what you're asking a little bit opposite. So the older red blood cells don't have as much impact on the A1C value right now today as the ones closer to today. So if your glucose was not where you wanted it to be 3 to 4 months ago, but in the past month, you've really reined things in and you've gotten it down and you've nailed it and you've got this beautiful looking standard deviation and everything is in range. This time period in the past month has more weight on actual A1C than 2, 3, 4 months ago because there aren't as many of those red blood cells hanging around to give data point to. Does that make sense?
It does, but then how is she seeing a 90-day GMI that's higher than her actual A1C? So take her out of it for a second. When that happens, what's the likelihood of what is likely impacting that?
And that could have relevance to accuracy then of her CGM.
I think Jenny hasn't had a signal on her Dexcom for a while. Is that what that?
Oh, I haven't, and I'm really, really annoyed right now. I actually called in a sensor. We talked about this. I called you yesterday, really annoyed, right? So, and this sensor has been wonky since I put it in yesterday.
I'll tell you what,
bad numbers, and now I have signal loss, and I've had signal loss 3 times this morning. Right. Attempting to reconnect, wait up to 30 minutes.
Don't wait.
Really?
Open your phone up, shut off the Bluetooth, and then turn it back on again. So open your phone, close all your apps that you're not using except for Dexcom, or you can close them all if you want right now for a second. And then
even my Loop app?
No, that you can leave open. Then go into your settings.
Yep.
And shut off the Bluetooth.
Yep.
Then turn the Bluetooth back on. Open the Dexcom back up. And then this is where I tell Arden, because Arden wears her Dexcom sensors on her hips. I'm like, shove that phone right up your ass. Just stick it right next to next to the transmitter. And leave it there for a few minutes. I bet you it's back in 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay, that'll be awesome. If you are, good to know people in the right places, right?
If I'm right about that, I'm amazing. So, and by the way, you just said something that I'm going to ask Jenny a question. I'm going to make myself a note for the next one here. Okay, so I'm so sorry. Where the heck were we? So
I know we were talking about accuracy.
Yes.
And so that's where some of that may have relevance. Some people have really awesome, consistent accuracy. They do a finger stick occasionally, and they're like, yep, my CGM is right on with that finger stick. Mm-hmm. But now in today's world with G5 and now G6 and whatever's coming out after this, with FDA approval without having to do finger sticks, many people literally aren't doing finger sticks anymore.
Yeah.
Whatever's appearing on their CGM is what they're using. Well, unfortunately, CGMs can be off. They may not be as accurate as what your true body blood glucose, your blood cells are telling.
Right.
So let's say this person's A1C is higher than the actual A1C comes out to be. CGM GMI is higher. It could be that the CGM is actually reading higher than their true glucose trend is reading in their body.
Yep. I'll tell you that so that's an interesting issue. And what it made me think was, what if she doesn't say here whether it's a G6 or a G5, right? What if she's calibrating with a meter that's less accurate than the CGM, and she's lying to the CGM? And so the CGM's like, so there's a lot of scenarios here. I'll tell you right now, that's why you have to put effort into getting whatever the best meter on the market is. Just get it.
Currently it's the Contour Next one.
That's the one I have. I don't think I've ever tested with that Contour, and it hasn't agreed with the CGM that I believed was accurate at the time.
The next most accurate is going to be the AccuCheck Guide Me. Mm-hmm. That's another one that Freestyle Lite by Abbott also does a really nice job accuracy wise. I think with the top 5 that are on the market, those 3 are within that as far as accuracy rating.
Contour's cool too because it's small and it's got a nice bright light and it doesn't take much blood to get it to go.
No.
Either. And it's got second chance. I forget what they call it, but if you hit some blood and it's not enough, you have like a fairly long
time period. I think it's like 15 to 20 seconds to get another drop on.
It's more time than you need. So, okay, and plus, I guess the other thing we have to consider too is, and Maddie comes in and says that a nurse practitioner at her work told her that the A1C machines are actually allowed to be up to 0.5% off. So even there, it's just a bunch of things you don't consider. Like, what if it's a little bit of all those things? I don't know that to be true.
And is it clarity there for the A1C machine would also be, is it an A1C machine that's an office A1C where they do your finger stick in the office and derive it, within the next 10 or 15 minutes? Right. Or is it a lab value A1C? That would be a good clarification to make for which A1C is allowed to be or have such variance.
Which would we prefer lab value, right? For accuracy?
Lab value for accuracy.
What about the finger sticks? How close are they, do you think, in the office?
The finger sticks can be a little off. I know in my office, when I used to see my endo in DC, they always did an office A1C, and I always asked them at the same time to do a lab because I wanted the accuracy from it. Yeah. There was always, for me, my average change was about a 0.3. So if my A1C was like 6 in the office, it was usually like a 6.3. If it was like 5.8 in the office, it was usually like a 6 from the lab value.
I'll tell you how I think about it too. Like listen, I don't make any secret of it. Arden's A1Cs are fantastic, right? And they've ranged between 5.2 and 6.2 for over 5 years now. If we go in and it's 5.2 and then 3 months later it's 5.4, I'm not like, oh my God. I'm just like, Arden's A1C is great. You know, like, I mean, you know, I don't see a difference between a 6.2 and a 6.4. You're doing terrific. You know, like it's not a lot to knot yourself up over. You know, not NOT and then KNOTT. Cool.
And by the way, I just want to let you know that your trick worked.
Of course it did.
I now have data.
Yeah. You're welcome. Don't you worry. Scott,
why did I not know that trick?
That's how I got the podcast. That's why. Good. So, all right. So Jenny's got her data back. We're all good. And that's a good, listen, there's a good one for all of you. If you're using the Dexcom G6 right now and you experience a signal loss, and it tells you, wait up till 30 minutes to reconnect. Close all the apps on your phone, like crash them. You know how to crash an app, right? And then shut off your Bluetooth and settings. You don't have to wait long. Turn it back on, reopen the Dexcom app, and then take that phone and stick it near the transmitter.
Wherever the transmitter is.
People are apt to blame Dexcom, which I'm sure they have culpability in this in some way or another, but Bluetooth is a very inspecific signal.
Problem
it's a big part of this. So Bluetooth is you know, has got its problems. So that's why some people see better or worse results with different phones. If you'd like to learn more about the InPen, you can always go to companionmedical.com, or there are links in your show notes, or at juiceboxpodcast.com. And if you'd like to check out Fiona on Instagram, her latest picture is of her racing in China. She says it's pretty cool to be racing at the 2008 Olympic Sailing Center. She's Fiona_wild on Instagram. Fiona the classic way, FIONA _ you know, is like a dash, but it's lower. And then wild, WYLDE. Check her out. If you're on MDI and you want to stay that way, but you wish you had a little more control, check out the InPen with your internet connection, probably on your phone. Companion Medical. They're terrific. If you'd like some perspective on how not musical I am, if that didn't just do it for you, consider this. In my head, the tune to Sweeney Todd was playing when I did that. I know, right? There's no correlation whatsoever.